Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Essential Libertarians, giving you the tool for self-governance. I'm your host, Kareem Mays, with my amazing co-host, Daniel Betro from The Quantum Effect. Daniel, how are you?
I'm good. How about yourself?
Doing well, doing well. A lot of crazy news, so we're going to get into that. We're going to dive into that, as Tim Pool would say. But first, if you're interested in keeping the Ron Paul revolution going, keeping the ideals of Murray Rothbard, Ludwig von Mises, and to the LP Mises caucus, our message is simple. No more war, no more lockdowns, no more bailouts, no more mandates. You have the ability to make the best decisions for yourself. Voluntary interactions are the best way to move humanity forward. So go here, check out our resources, learn about who we are through our actions, and then you can go ahead and sign up and be part of the decentralized revolution. Take human action. Okay, so one thing I want to highlight is we don't talk about foreign policy too much since this whole international thing started. But one thing I do want to talk about is a lot of people don't know about Yemen. And just to give the long and short of it, a few years ago, Saudi Arabia started bombing it. Now, why this is so important is it's the poorest country in the Arab Peninsula, and it's the biggest humanitarian crisis. Yes, the UN said that, but for once, I'll agree with them because I do believe it's true. Now, the issues started under Barack Obama, persisted under Trump with weapons deals and stuff like that, and then people were hoping like Biden maybe did some things, like maybe he didn't give them as much help, but I always check antiwar.com because I think it's a fairly reliable site. Um, and this is a little article you can read here. I'm going to break it down. This is news anti-war. Biden administration approves 650 million missiles sale to Saudi Arabia. The missiles are made by Raytheon, part of the military-industrial complex, former employer of Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin. And Lloyd Austin, people don't know, did work for Raytheon. It's not anything out there. Check it out yourself. So what did they say? Pentagon said Thursday that the State Department approved potential sale missiles to Saudi Arabia worth about 650 million. And then Saudi Arabia requested a purchase of a 280 AIM 120C air-to-air missiles, 596 low missiles, launchers, and other related equipment. The primary contractor is Raytheon Technologies and the former employer of Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin. The Defense Secretary said the sales in support of Saudi Arabia's Air Force that is waging a major campaign in Yemen. In February, President Biden vowed to end support for Riyadh's offensive operations in Yemen. It was revealed in April that the Pentagon is still servicing Saudi warplanes that are bombing the country. Now, the missile sale is another example of how the U.S. is continuing the brutal support in Yemen as the second arms deal for the Saudis approved by the Biden administration. In September, the State Department approved a deal worth $500 million to maintain Saudi Arabia's military helicopters, including Apache and Black Hawk helicopters. I find it, I'll just make a side note, a lot of people are mad the Taliban have those. I don't think the Saudis are better, and they're probably even worse because they're using it to aggress against the neighboring country. Why is this important? What can you do here at home? Well, if you're aware of this, know that it's the worst humanitarian crisis. Without U.S. support, Saudi Arabia's Air Force would quickly be grounded, and they would be forced to negotiate with the Houthis. I don't know what that would come into, but hopefully they wouldn't like each other, but they come to an agreement. Saudi warplanes have been pounding Yemen in recent months around the city of Marib, where the Houthis continue to make gains despite the air force they face. The U.S. blockade in Yemen has caused widespread disease and mass starvation in the country. Early this year, the UN warned if conditions don't change in Yemen, 400,000 children under the age of 5 will starve to death in 2021 alone. This means hundreds of thousands of children may have already died since the warning was made. All right, the two big takeaways from here are, one, you might be wondering, well, Kareem, there's so many things going on in the U.S., there's so many things going on internationally. Why should I care specifically about this one? And I know the news is flooded. That's why I want to bring this up, because you can prevent a lot of people from perishing simply by being aware of this, simply by, getting your voices heard. Ro Khanna was trying to pass a bill to end support for this. This needs to stop. I think regardless of where you stand, left, right, center, Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal, we need to stop this from happening. And it can be done just by saying, no, we're done with these weapons deals. And interestingly enough, even I think it was Pelosi who said this, which it's crazy that I'm saying, but she is like, well, we have no military ties to them. They're not part of NATO. They're not really our friends. They're not, in my opinion, even a good regime of people. They're not trying to better humanity or, defend themselves. They're using this in offensive. Like, I don't think Secretary of Defense, I don't think Lloyd is, ignorant to the fact that they're going to use this for offense, not defense. Find a funny Secretary of Defense, because this is completely offensive, and we can stop this. We can end a lot of human suffering abroad, and then we can actually save money and use it to rebuild our economy and things that were destroyed during this, whatever you want to call it, so-called international situation. So that's my take on it. What do you think?
So for me, I would say, again, as you sort of pointed out, that Lloyd Austin, if you remember, for those listening in the beginning when he was becoming appointed, there were some real questions as to if he even can be the Secretary of Defense, because how he was just recently a general and how he did work for Raytheon, which would be basically a conflict of interest. Nothing really that new as far as Secretary of Defenses and government officials being associated with the private sector part of the military and then becoming in government. It happens more often than you think, but it's still not a good thing, right? And there's a lot of people for the Biden administration that I saw as better and worse than others, but generally speaking, I completely dislike the whole administration, from the Secretary of Treasury to the Federal Reserve, to the Secretary of Defense, to the Vice President, to the President, to just about all positions you can think, to the head of transportation, Pete Buttigieg. Like, all these guys I have major critiques of. But when you have a guy at the highest position who is overseeing the security of our state, who is overseeing our military in a lot of ways, to be closely associated with the private sector and Raytheon, and you can obviously see that there would be incentive for him to work with Saudi Arabia and give missiles to Saudi Arabia, whether he believes that it's good or not, but because he's probably gotten money from these people. And we know that if there's one thing that Raytheon is good at, it's lobbying to government officials, because they're, I think, the fourth largest lobbyist in the federal government. My take on is this. I don't think Lloyd should have been the Secretary of Defense in the first place. And the second take is sort of more general, broader scope, is that I just don't think we should be intervening anywhere. And you say, well, there's a humanitarian crisis. And I say, yes, there is, but we're worsening it. We're deepening the problems in Yemen. We've been giving bombs, artilleries, missiles to Saudi Arabia, which they have then been using to bomb one of the poorest nations, if you can even really call it that, in the world, where they're already suffering from a genocide, where they're already suffering from malnourishment and hunger. We are funding a humanitarian crisis, and not on the good side. We are funding the agitators of this genocide, and we've been aiding them for a while. So I think we should cut all our money to Saudi Arabia, and I think we really should completely get out of Yemen. And if we are, let's just say we are going to be in Yemen, like you said before we started talking, let's take the role of the strongest, most harshest interventionist. Well, why would we really want to go into Yemen in the first place? How would it really benefit us if we're thinking about going into nations and overtaking Yemen, right? There's no reason there's no sort of benefit or reward to going in Yemen. We're not going to rebuild it. It's so poor. It's destitute. It's obvious that the government doesn't have plans in the same way that they did with Afghanistan or Iraq, right? So why are we intervening in the first place? What are we gaining from it? Well, I can tell you maybe a few things, right? I think we're gaining, obviously, certain money from Saudi Arabia and different corporations who are giving money to the military-industrial complex to make these bombs, right? Because to make bombs, you have to have a reason, right? And if the military can ask the government, and you can probably look this up, right? The largest increase in funding for the military this year. Why do you think that is? Do you think they're just going to they need all that money for no reason? Well, I'll tell you one thing. They're probably going to throw a lot of that money in like just nothing, right? Like not bombs necessarily, but they need to make bombs. They need to pump out weapons. They need to pump out everything that the military-industrial complex does. And they need to lend these weapons and these arms to other countries. Why? Because right there you have arms deals, weapon deals, which is bank for the military-industrial complex. And we've seen this pattern time and time and time again. And I don't think there's any other solution other than just completely get out of Yemen and stop giving Saudi Arabia missiles. There's no need for it. It doesn't even benefit you if you're purely egotistical, if you're purely selfish. It doesn't benefit you other than maybe monetary kickbacks. Other than that, it doesn't benefit you. It harms you more, and it harms you on I think you would agree with me, but on a global scale. The fact that other countries are looking at us, funding a country which is then using those funds and weapons to completely obliterate another country. So many negatives here. I don't think there can be any other solution, and someone who has a logical mind, other than stop intervening, cut the funds, stop giving weapons deal to Saudi Arabia, and just get out of Yemen. And if other countries want to go in and try and save Yemen, I mean, they're welcome to do that. But it's obvious that we are very bad at saving or rebuilding countries. It's never worked, right? When it comes to rebuilding countries, we're like 0 and 15. So we've never been good at it. And when it's like this, right? It's like when you take a fat guy or an out of shape guy and he tries to run track, right? He tries time after again and he loses every race. And after losing every race and realizing you're not physically and mentally fit, you just have to realize this isn't my thing. I need to do something else. And we should realize that we are not good at rebuilding countries. We are not good at implementing or injecting democracy, as they say, and we cause 10 times more harm than we create good. So that's my take on the whole situation. And I think if you were to ask me about any other country, right, Kareem, I would probably give you the same answer. Get out of that country. And one thing that I want to mention is that, as you pointed out earlier, Iran definitely has a big part to play in this, right? Because we're trying to basically fight a proxy with Iran, right? We are trying to, quote unquote, keep Iran from building arms, when in reality, we're instigating and agitating Iran by funding weapons to Saudi Arabia, which then are bombing people who then, which then affect Iran. And you think about what was the word? I couldn't think of it earlier. What's the word?
Proxy sanctions.
Sanctions. Thank you, God. And the sanctions we have on Iran are putting their people into starvation. And I will give credit to Vice, although I never really do. They had a great documentary on this about how, when we cut sanctions to Iran, starvation went up by like over 25%. And they're on the ground there with footage, and they show you what Iran looks like, and it's terrible. And all the people there, which is crazy, don't even hate the U.S. They don't even hate the U.S. But there's this, just like with us, there's this big government, this big state, which is making decisions on behalf of their people. But all they want to do is be able to eat, to be able to live a good life, to pursue happiness, to pursue their goals. But because their country is so poor and they're reliant on a Western power such as the United States, when you do put those sanctions on it, right? When the Western world suffers, the third world starves, as they say. And I think that really is a key here, right? I'm not saying we have to go in and try and save Iran. I'm not saying that we shouldn't fear Iran necessarily. I'm not saying that they're completely purely innocent in this sort of foreign affair that we're talking about. But what I am saying is that we are simply agitating them, and if they were to use nukes, I'd assume that it would probably be because we keep attacking and attacking through proxies, through sanctions, and all these different things. Because, how long can those people put up with it before we get another Al Qaeda, another 9/11? Right? You got to remember that in 1979, right, the war, the first war in Afghanistan begun, and it was a basic proxy war against the Soviet Union. So we were on the side of the Taliban, right? For those of you who don't know. And in 1989, after the Soviet had pulled their last troops, you know what the United States did after destroying the whole country, after giving billions of dollars of weapons to the Taliban to help fight the Soviet Union, after their whole country was destroyed. You know what we did? We said, well, Soviet Union left, it's time to get out of here. And we left them in complete obliteration, in crumbs, in ruins. And the Taliban was like, I thought you were my friends. And then they realized that, hey, the Soviet Union screwed us, the United States screwed us. And then shortly after we pulled out in '89 began the Civil War. And then after that, historically, there was a lot of other problems. And then on top of that, they have all these millions of dollars worth of equipment and missiles. So they were pretty angry because they got fucked by two countries. They got lied to by two countries. And that created this sort of, and I'm not saying that this justifies their actions. I'm simply saying that we agitated them. And guess what they did? They then began to hate America. You know why they hated us? Because we went in their country, we said we were going to help them, and we simply used them as pawns to fight the Soviet Union. And when we were done with that, we left out, and their country fell to ruins. And I understand why those people, especially have more extremist views, would be like, okay, now let's go blow this country up, because we blew their country up. Like, we literally destroyed their country, and they just wanted to seek equal force, because what they did to us, and I'm not trying to justify 9/11 here, was equal to what we, if not worse, because they just bombed a few buildings here, and there's a lot of people dead. But when you go look at the numbers in Afghanistan, over 1 million people dead, their complete economy was obliterated. The starvation, right, for like 10 years, a civil war right after. We destroyed them much worse than the 9/11 terror attacks. So they were using equal force against us because we were the ones who went in and intervened and caused the problem. And I think we really, truly have to start realizing that we cannot keep causing problems, because if Iran does get nuclear weapons, well, then 9/11 might look like a sort of school shooting in terms if we see nuclear weapons. And I think that it's more likely for, and I'm not trying to say this because I think the Middle East is bad. I'm not even coming at the Muslim sort of religion ideology. I have critiques of it, but I'm saying I think the Middle East and a lot of countries which we've terrorized, I'm using that word specifically, would probably be the most likely ones to nuke us. And I'm simply saying that because we have agitated them for decade after decade after decade with sanctions, with wars, with proxy wars, with CIA-funded experiments, with torturing these people. So I really think that they're not our enemy, but we have been making them our enemy for so long that, listen, I don't think Russia's going to nuke us. I don't even think China's going to nuke us. But I think these people who are very desperate, the Chinese and Russians aren't desperate like they are. They're desperate because they're poor, they're hungry, they're angry, as well as they should be, and they want to seek revenge. And I think it's dangerous to continue what we did in the 80s. Sorry, that was kind of long-winded.
No, that was good. Like, hey, when I want input, a lot of people are like, yeah, it's bad, don't do it. I would rather have like a long format input than just a couple things. That's why I really, really like use a co-host. Really, really good feedback. So, and I'll just add that when you use people as proxies, there will be blowback. When you use people, you can even think of this in a localized term. If I use someone and then just extort money from them and use them for favor, they're going to come back and say, why did you use me? When you do that on a global scale, really bad things happen. That's what I want to say. We can prevent these bad things from happening, or at least mitigate them. That will be a great step, not only for the world, but for us as well. Now, moving on, let's go domestic. Let's see what's going on here. Because we got, and also, here's another big argument. We got a lot of problems here, even more so.
Wow.
We keep building them. So how about this? Let's fix, like Jordan Peterson says, clean your room before you try to fix the world, which is really powerful, because how are you going to do international politics if your clothes are lying everywhere? Makes sense. How are you going to fix the world if you still have problems here? So if people don't know who Project Veritas is, I do investigative journalism. A lot of people ask me, do you think James O'Keefe is a conservative or a libertarian or a liberal? And I say, I don't know. Haven't talked to him. But what I do see is he's kind of like the domestic form of Julian Assange. And I will put a plug here. If you like the work he's doing, great. If you don't, you don't. If you like the work he's doing and you think it's, getting some ground, talking to people, higher ups at these companies, Pfizer, things like that, higher ups at, different things. He was recently looking at the New Jersey election just to make sure everything was going good or not going good. You can go here and donate. So shout out to Jack Lloyd and Foe, who made me kind of aware of this.
Yeah, and I think what would be a good thing to do is just sort of funny thing. We don't have to do it, but if you pull up Project Veritas's Wikipedia page, oh my God, it's so hilarious. Because listen, I understand why Fox News might get lower ratings as far as their journalism go, because they're very ideological and they're biased on a lot of their stories. I get it. Listen, am I saying that Fox News is worse than CNN? No, I'm saying they're both pretty much equally as garbage. Yeah. But Project Veritas is one of the only sources I find that almost every single one of their stories and the reports that come out are backed with video and audio evidence, or one or the other. So you never get that with CNN. You get a source of a source who told a friend who's like maybe, and then you know that whole thing with remember before the election happened with Russia and the bounties, which never even happened. There was never, no one even said that. It was a made up story, which then CNN ran with it, and even Fox kind of assumed it was true, which is bad on them for not questioning it. But with Project Veritas, they give you video and audio evidence for almost everything that happens. I think, and I'm going to go out on a limb here and say they're one of the most objective news organizations I have found on the internet, as far as openly showing their sources, and not only showing their sources, saying like I have a source, naming their sources eventually. They don't do it right away because of privacy concerns, but showing the videos and audios of their sources. And they say deceptive journalism on Wikipedia. And I don't know how you can say it's deceptive when everything they're doing is on video. Everything they're doing is backed by imagery. It just seems crazy to me that we live in a time that one of the most objective news stories as far as showing sources goes is one of the most deceptive.
Yeah. Well, to me, it's the same thing as WikiLeaks. They don't want it, in my opinion, because it's so objective. Like, I think James is actually pretty objective. I don't know, to be fair, which way he leans, although I have some ideas. But, like, funny enough, I've heard a lot of his views. They seem libertarian, some seem conservative. But here's the funny thing. The funny thing is, it's kind of like the domestic version of WikiLeaks. Like, WikiLeaks was looking at what was going on in Iraq and saying this was happening. These are the bad things that were happening. And Bradley Manning or Chelsea Manning got in trouble for reporting that. And isn't the whole thing they always say, if you see something, say something. If you see something, say something. We want transparency. Transparency is good. Like,
but they don't, though.
But they do it, and this happens. So what's going on? We got the Federal Bureau of Investigation raids 2 locations linked to Project Veritas. I'm going to go with why they said they did it. A lot of people, because it's kind of hard actually, because a lot of people are saying it's because of New Jersey. People are saying it's because of a New York thing. People are saying it was because they invested from, I don't know. But they searched 2 locations, part of investigation into who stole Joe Biden's daughter's diary. So let's take a look. The feds reportedly carried out searches of at least 2 locations associated with the bumbling amateur spies at the right-wing outfit, Project Veritas. And what sources speaking, I love how they just, like, it starts with insults. Like, if you want to be a journalist, like, don't do this. And one source is speaking with New York Times said on Friday is an investigation how the group obtained the private diary of Joe Biden's daughter before the 2020 election. The Times wrote that people briefed on the matter told the paper that the FBI agents working with the federal prosecutors searched 2 locations linked to people who had worked with the group and its leader, James O'Keefe. One of the locations was in New York City, while the other was in Mamaroneck, New York, if I pronounced that correctly, where Project Veritas offices so happen to be located. Now, what does Project Veritas say? Claims to be a journalistic outfit that exposes corruption. One could also call it a partisan operation that platforms claims of left-wing corruption and attempts to infiltrate progressive organizations with the intent of secretly recording members saying something that angers conservatives, upon which time Veritas touts their findings as a blockbuster expose where they're being showered in donations, an ongoing civil suit between consulting firm Democracy Partners and Project Veritas, which infiltrated the consultancy using an operative with a fake name, resume, and a federal judge. So let me just address that. I'm pretty sure Project Veritas, if the right wing's doing bad stuff, they'll expose them. Left wing's doing bad stuff. If centrists are doing bad stuff, they'll expose them. I don't see how. Would you consider Pfizer exactly progressive? Would you consider, people, all these people who they investigate as all progressive? I wouldn't. I just say they're out taking a look at people who are potentially doing something that's shady. I'm not saying that every finding they have is perfect either. I'm not, claim that it's completely objective, but it's pretty close. And I know I honestly believe that if we reverse positions, which is possible in politics, because when I was growing up in the 90s, it was the right doing a lot of bad stuff, canceling people, doing kind of like where the left's at now, and the left's kind of switch. If it does happen to switch back again, which is possible, I could see Veritas going after the right as well, doing the same objective journalism. They just take a look at claims. People, actually what happens is, to my knowledge, is people saying, man, I'm in a bad situation in this company, in this place, in this setting, and people are coming down on me, and who can I talk to? Well, the media won't listen to me. This is why you want a good media, because if Fox and CNN, like you were saying, are doing objective journalism, you just go to them. There's Project Veritas.
Yeah. But that's the problem, Kareem, and it's a problem, but it also is sort of a reason for a solution. So it's obvious that legacy media cannot be trusted. Like, if let's just say I was working at Pfizer, and let's just say my boss, this is just an example, was putting harmful chemicals into the injections, and I wanted to go to someone to expose this. Well, I go to CNN and I feel like they're not going to do anything about it, or MSNBC, because we've seen MSNBC and CNN cover up the Epstein stories. There's a very widely spread popular video of a journalist for MSNBC, I believe, who was caught on a hot mic while she didn't know she was being recorded, saying that, wow, we should have done something about that story. I had that story years ago. I wanted to cover it, but they wouldn't let me. So we've seen them cover up stories. But on top of the covering up part, they also probably, I would feel in that situation, that what I say can be used to sort of paint a political narrative. So it's, I'm giving this story, and then whichever sort of media outlet takes it is going to use it to do framing, and framing me coming out as a larger political agenda, which is not good, right? You want to just expose what's being exposed. You don't want to be involved in the left and the right. You just want honesty, and you don't want your words used to paint a sort of narrative that isn't true. So I think that the fact that we do have Project Veritas, I think the fact that we do have timcast.com, I think the fact that we do have guys like Luke Radowski at wearechange.org, I think the fact that we still have the New York Post, which is a great newspaper, guys. Like, I shit on the Times all the time, but I'll tell you one thing about the Post, one of the oldest newspapers in this country. They supported Youngkin, and I wouldn't say that they're necessarily right, but they are so objective with their stories. I've seen some stories from certain writers on there I don't like, but mostly the Post does a really good job of not only breaking down things, but showing sources, doing investigative journalism, and kind of checking their sources and whatnot. So we have all these organizations that are bad, that really can't be trusted. But because of that, we have a lot of independent sort of organizations that have come out, and there's probably going to be more that are going to be coming out that people think they can go to. And I think that people can trust them more than anyone could have ever in the past with legacy media. See, I don't look at it just like a now type thing. I think that the media was always lying to us. And one of the key things that I think that I point out, and an example of this is the Walter Cronkite sort of controversy, right? In 1968, I believe. Anyways, the 60s, right? He was sort of pro-Vietnam, right? And he made it very obvious that he was pro-Vietnam. And then he, went to Vietnam, and then all of a sudden changed the sort of narrative, which was weird because right after that, you had the Nixon race, and it was obvious that Walter Cronkite and a lot of his works was more on the liberal. He donated to liberal journalism. The thing is it wasn't, that information didn't come out back then. So they were lying to us back then. Do I think Walter Cronkite was better than Don Lemon? Yes, I do. I think he was more objective. But it's not to say that there still wasn't this stuff going on. It's just to say that now, because of decentralized information, we have the ability to call politicians on their bullshit, and there's no way they can get around it. So you have an organization, let's just say Kareem.com, right? Kareem.com has never worked for any sort of political agencies. They've never worked in the government. They have no special interest, and they've completely independently created their S corp or corporation LLC, whatever it may be. And you have guys and girls at different corporations, big, large corporations, who can go to you and trust you because you are not a large organization with a narrative or an agenda, and you're independent, you're funded by the people, and you're honest, and you're not tied to any sort of thing that is propping you up. You're just yourself. So I think that is a really good thing. And I think for people who want to do something like that, right? People who want to join in on Veritas, who want to contribute to journalism, I think one of the first things you can do by contributing is, if you have something to say, I'd say get a microphone and set up a YouTube, right? Because my thing with YouTube was like, I would talk to my girlfriend, other people. I have all these political conversations. I think I told you the story about how I changed my brother over. Like, he voted for Biden, and then like months later, he was like, that was the worst mistake I have ever made. And he's every time I hang out, he's like, God, I'm sorry, man. I should have listened to you. But he was brainwashed, right? So I got to see this process of my brother being completely brainwashed by CNN, watching CNN all throughout the pandemic. And I would come over to his house and I would tell him these things, and he denied it and denied it and denied it. But because I brought him so much evidence and proof, he ended up voting for Joe Biden. But then he checked out what I said. He's like, all right, let's see if he's right. And then he went down a whole bunch of rabbit holes, and then he realized, wow, he is right. So you have the ability to destroy narrative, I should say, which one thing that's great with YouTube is that you can get on there, and all you need is a $60, $70 mic and a computer, and you can start uploading videos, and you can start calling out bullshit. And I think there's more than enough room for content creators on here. And I just think the ability to for the truth to get out is so much greater now. I don't see a way that any state can do anything about it, right? They can't. They suppress information. They censor people on YouTube. They censor people on Twitter. They're doing everything in their power, and everything still comes out. So it's almost useless on the state's part. They're trying, but in the end, the information will come out because it's a numbers game. And guess what? The internet has numbers. And not only does it have numbers, it has speed, right? Instant gratification. You can get an article, you can get a journalist all the way in Switzerland who breaks a story, gets a video, boom, send it straight to the U.S. instantaneously. There's not enough time for them to cover it up and go in and bribe.
Yeah, no, definitely. And what I'm going to say is this. Like you mentioned, Walter Cronkite, you mentioned all these people, Tim Pool and all that. And they have opinions, and trust me, what I am not saying, I will knock it out in one sentence, as Nietzsche would say. I like to, I admire to put what people write in books into like 10 sentences or one sentences. You cannot, because we're all humans, we're all biased. If I look at a sunset, you look at a sunset, we'll describe it differently. Maybe we live and feel differently. So it's not possible to have completely objective journalism.
Yeah.
Julian Assange, Veritas, WikiLeaks, CNN, Fox, the other. you can't have uncompromised journalism, but you can't have completely
Unbiased
objective journalism,
Yeah.
but you can have uncompromised journalism. And that's what I endeavor to do. And trust me, I don't actually, even Project Veritas, I don't look into every story they've done. I don't actually care for every single thing they've done to look into it, to say good or bad. But I think recently, with what's going on in the world, I think that they've done a few good stories. Now, there's a viewer, if you can see that on the screen, he said, does the Veritas raid day after this medical procedure came out, is that significant or just coincidence? Now, I can't say. I don't get invited to the big, I'm not in the big club, as George Carlin would say, but I can guess. So let's talk about actually what's going on with that domestically. So they just got raided. It's kind of interesting. They just got raided because we got some OSHA rules. We got some stuff that the CDC ruled on for adolescents. So let's break it down. You actually did a really good job with this. So check out Daniel B. You can go to his YouTube channel, which I will be showing here in a second at the end of the broadcast. But if you go to Daniel B., you can find this story here. Go to YouTube. Once you get to YouTube, go ahead and search bar, type in Daniel B. Boop. Right. And then you can see the OSHA mandate goes through Daily Wire and people are leaving en masse. So I'm not going to spend tons of time, but let me just break down the details for all the folks at home. OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Hazard Administration. I find this ironic because they want to keep people safe. Apparently,
apparently they're a governing body that can literally put forth legislation which basically enforces, or I should say, forces and mandates people to take medical procedures, which is just completely way off of the bounds, way out of the bounds of OSHA's legal parameters. It's so far-reaching. It's blatantly unconstitutional. It's actually so far-reaching that I can't even believe that they did it. Like, I can believe that they would say they're going to do something, but for OSHA to really approve this, for this to really take effect on January 4th, I don't use this word a lot, unprecedented. And you hear leftists try and compare it to 1904 and compare it to the case where someone was mandated to pay a fine and there's this sort of false equivocation there. Like, this is far from that. That it's just so crazy.
Yeah. And so let me say that for a long time, I was like the one libertarian who's like, I could get people like, okay, the FBI, okay, the CIA is doing bad things. Look, they're installing people like, yeah. They agreed with me. And then I said, like, okay, well, this department's bad. And this department, they're like, well. And then I finally like get down. Okay, I'm like, okay, I beat the ATF pretty easily. Like the TSA, does not have a good rate. I'm like, let's get rid of OSHA. They're like, whoa, yeah, but people just be doing jobs like this and swinging.
Yeah, I know.
And how I figured that out was not this. This is way back when, before this.
Yeah.
I just listened to Mike Rowe, Dirty Jobs. I don't agree with him all politically and stuff, so don't lose it. But here's the thing: he talked about some of his experiences working some pretty crazy jobs, like being on a fishing boat and stuff. I'm not going to say that jobs don't have hazards. That's ridiculous. Any job where you're going to deal with pigs, or you're going to deal, which I'm not even a fan of, doing some of those jobs myself because they involve hurting animals. But and I'm not a big factory farm dude even. But here's the thing: he talked about a lot of these safety hazards would either make things more dangerous or they would be ineffective, because OSHA people just come in and say, oh, well, by the book, you should do it this way. Well, by the book, sometimes it doesn't work.
Or it's more dangerous.
Yeah. I'm not saying companies would regulate perfectly, but the free market has a way of creating reputation that, oh, well, Kareem was on a job where he was doing electrical lines and he got hurt. Well, I don't want to work there until it's safe. And I do believe the free market doesn't do it perfectly, but they can regulate themselves. That being said, now we fast forward the clock today. OSHA is telling companies with 100 people or more, applies to an estimated 84 million workers. They must either have their workers get this January 4, or they have to do it at least once a week. They have to get paid time off to do it. They don't need to pay for employers don't need to pay for it. People have to wear masks, and healthcare workers don't have an option. So what I'll say to this is it's going to make healthcare workers leave, which is going to make your hospital more crowded. If this truly is a terrible disease, why would you just let a bunch of healthcare workers go? I thought we wanted to keep occupations safe. I thought we wanted to keep people safe. This doesn't make sense. So 2 really quick things here. I'm not going to spend tons and tons of time on this. Is I would say abolish OSHA and government mandates never work. Both of these things don't work. This department doesn't work. This mandate doesn't work. I think it's a terrible idea, and it's just going to cause more problems than any. I don't think it's going to solve any problems. But that's government for you. They make things worse, and then they always reform. I think it's funny how they're like, well, we need education reform. We need prison reform. We need to fix Afghanistan after so long. We just need to, right strategy, the right amount of money. They need more. We need to fix Pakistan with their non-existent gender studies program.
Dude, come on. Those gender studies are legitimate, and there was definitely no lobbying going on. There were legitimate funds. I mean, why wouldn't you fund millions of dollars to gender studies in Pakistan? It's obvious to me that greatly benefits the United States and its sovereign people, in my opinion.
You know what? I would actually put a little bit of money in that if I could see it, just to see what that looks like.
Yeah, it looks like this. It's actually a bunch of people on Raytheon, and they have these fake setup places in Pakistan, and they're like, we're doing gender studies.
I don't even think that would work. Because I hung out with people from Pakistan. They had longer beards than me. They're like, you can't shave it. Prophet Muhammad said, I gave the dude one time, I gave him beef jerky. He's like, is that halal? Which is similar to kosher, but
okay.
And he ate a piece. He's like, no, I'm not doing this. He's like, when I listened to Metallica back in the day, it's before I got into hardcore, they're like, well, you should listen to Quran. So pretty, I'm going to go out and probably say there isn't one. And if you tried to...
Yeah, I know. That's what I always found weird is Pakistan, generally speaking, is a very, very, very fundamentalist type country. And it's like, well, that's kind of weird, right? Out of all the places to be funding gender studies, I'd find it very unlikely that it'd be in one of the most, again, fundamentalist places in the world.
I'm going to say on this show, there ain't no gender studies in Pakistan. It does not exist. That's like opening up a bacon stand in a kosher place or a place with halal. But feel free to correct me. Feel free. Honestly, if I'm wrong,
if you correct Kareem, show the proof. All right. If you correct them, because if you can show me some sort of evidence about these gender studies, hey, I mean, I'm not saying it's not true. I'm just saying, in my opinion, it's highly unlikely. That's all. Highly unlikely.
Not. Well, I'll say there's a 99.9 chance about the survival rate of this thingy that doesn't exist. So we got OSHA doing their, messing things up and causing problems. But the Center for Disease Control wants kids to take this procedure 5 to 11. So CDC and its prevention is recommending that all kids 5 through 11 get a low dose of this made by Pfizer-BioNTech. The move clears the way for the shots to be administered as soon as tomorrow, and I think they did start doing it, though it may be a few days till it's widely available. Director Rochelle Walensky, who's the head of the CDC, issued the recommendation Tuesday, just hours after a unanimous vote by the CDC's Advisory Committee on Immunization Practice, supporting the use of vaccine for children in this age group. Walensky's decision means approximately 28 million children ages 5 through 11 will be eligible. And President Biden issued a statement calling the decision a turning point in our battle against COVID-19. So the federal government has purchased enough of the low-dose children's vaccines for every child in America. Okay, shipments of this vaccine started last Friday following the FDA another organization that probably don't need, decision to authorize the vaccine in the SAGE group. The White House COVID-19 response coordinator Jeffrey Zients said that some 15 million doses are being shipped this week. The program for distributing the vaccine will be fully operational. Before the advisory committee's meeting Tuesday, Walensky called this a monumental day. She urged a panel to consider the toll that COVID-19 has on children. What is it? I don't think it's the argument was that they could spread it to someone, even their arguments, they could spread it to someone who's older, not that.
We're looking at 11-year-olds, right? Is that what it was? Like a
5 to
11?
5 to 11. So, okay, let me just say this. Even if you think something is the best thing ever, the whole premise of any culture is that you should protect children. Now, this hasn't even been out really for a year. Not a year. We didn't even get a year. Clinical studies need 10 years. This doesn't make any sense because even by the CDC's own numbers, I think people like you in our age group, like 20s, 30s, correct me if I'm wrong, it's like 99.96%, somewhere in there. People always get me because I say a percent or a number wrong. If I'm wrong, that's fine. It's somewhere in that percentage.
So there's
kids are even higher. So why is this necessary? That's the thing I want people to ask. You don't have to say, Kareem, I'm wrong. Also, adults can. Here's the biggest thing why I think this is problematic is adults can kind of consent. Adults can go on Google. Adults can go on this site, that site. Adults can go to this news site, that news site. They can do research. They can compound research. Adults can go to a doctor and have a sophisticated discussion about, here's my medicines, here's the thing, here's that. Like Tim Pool says, I'm not against people seeing their doctor. Just make sure you pick a good doctor and you get even opinions from multiple doctors. That's fine. But here's the thing. Kids aren't going to do that. Kids aren't able to do tons of research and figure out, is this good for them? Kids aren't going to know if they have underlying conditions that may cause problems with this. Kids aren't going to have that capability. I remember when I was a kid, all I wanted to do, showing you my age, was play Sega Genesis and run outside. And I didn't really have, any extensive knowledge of, why I needed to do things medically. Or what they would do. And now, for example, I'm looking into LASIK. I didn't just go get LASIK. I looked at the worst information I could find. I looked at the best information. Then I talked to friends and family who had gone to see this doctor. And hey, what do you think of him? Was he good? Is there any side effects? Here are the side effects. And I really read into LASIK. What do they actually do? This doesn't apply to say what's in it because there's nothing in LASIK. I'm not taking an actual substance, but what's in this stuff? What does it do long term? And, why is there here's the last point I'll make. There's no liability for these companies if something goes wrong. So I would say don't give it to kids at all. If adults really want it, I believe in freedom, they can get it, but you have to ask yourself this, not just about your kid, but yourself this. What's all in it? What are the long-term effects? I'm talking about 10-year effects, not one. That to me is long-term. You can disagree with me there if you'd like. And why do they have no liability? If you have a good product, like if you have a bag of chips, like I have a bag of chips, right below me, it says if you're not completely satisfied, we'll give you another bag. Which I find to be a funny phrase because I don't think I've ever been 100% satisfied with a product if it could improve. But if you're not satisfied with a bag, then they'll get you your money back. And just a crazy story. When I was in college, one of my friends actually liked chips, and they gave him a big bag of chips, which is funny because even the chip companies, even the food you're eating, I'm not saying it's perfect, they have some kind of liability. If Lay's keeps putting out bad chips, people get sick, they go out of business. I know Ronald Reagan's act protects them, so it's kind of ridiculous to me. Until there's liability, until we know what it does long term, until we have some information on what's exactly in there and what's going on, I don't think you should be taking it if you can't answer those questions, why, in detail, and know about the procedure. And it's definitely not possible that your kid or kids are going to look into everything that I mentioned here. So sorry, that was long-winded. I'll let you give you your opinion on this.
Yeah. First thing I will say is this. For all those out there listening to this, just remember the same company, right? The real biggest sort of propagator of the vaccine, the most backed, usually the most taken is Pfizer, right? Now, Pfizer has the largest lawsuit in I don't even think U.S. world history, right? And they paid it out, right? They've had to pay out the largest lawsuit in the history of any corporation, billions of dollars. But not only have they had to pay the largest lawsuit, they've had to pay multiple billion-dollar lawsuits because of a few things, one of them being Oxycontin, right? What was Oxycontin? It was a drug that was labeled by Pfizer's, as we say, experts, to have an addiction percentage of 0.08. And it turns out the addiction percentage rate of Oxycontin was actually 96.5%. And they knew that beforehand, and they lied, and millions died. Millions upon millions upon millions died. Different psychiatrists around the country prescribed the medicine, being told that this had a low addiction rate. And then when their patients came back to them telling them they were addicted, they didn't know what to do. They told Pfizer multiple times that they're having higher addiction rates that it says on the bottle. And they told Pfizer they did nothing. They lied about it, covered it up, and they were sued for billions of dollars and had to pay out a large suit to multiple people. Now, does that mean that they're completely evil? No, not necessarily. But it's interesting, this company that has had problems, not only with Oxycontin, but other drugs, is now making this vaccine and has absolutely no liability for it, right? And that's a lot of vaccines in general, because as you say, Reagan's vaccine protection law, which was put through in the 80s, does protect almost all companies from liability when it comes to vaccines. There's certain situations that don't make you exempt. That make you exempt. But the point is this company has known to lie about their products, has been responsible for the deaths of millions of people. Millions of people have died as a result to Pfizer lying. Keep that in mind. The head of Pfizer right now, the executive chairman of Pfizer, regularly meets with Bill Gates, is part of the business council who works closely with Bill Gates to fund the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, to fund the Open Society Foundation. And the Open Society and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has donated millions to Pfizer. So they're interconnected. And the idea that this vaccine is somehow protected from all of the things that have happened in the past with medications. Listen, guys, the number one cause of drug overdose, the drug, is fentanyl, right? And you say, well, what is fentanyl? Well, it's a drug that's supposed to be used in extreme medical cases for sedation and even pain in a lot of cases, but it's responsible for more overdoses than any other drug right now. And you know who made fentanyl? Go ahead and give it a guess. Pfizer, right? So this all kind of ties back to a larger narrative, is that this corporation, not all corporations, but has been known to lie, cover up, obscure, minimize, or exaggerate what their medications do. It's not to say that the vaccine doesn't work. I'll go out here and I'll say, honestly, the vaccine does seem to work. The only problem I have with the vaccine is that it seems though you're going to have to get this vaccine every 6 months, because as far as efficacy goes, many trials and studies have shown after 6 months, you have around 30% efficacy. After a year, you have less than 10%. So you're talking about a vaccine that literally less than a year of getting it, you're going to be close to what you were as far as your immunity levels to when you didn't get it. So I think that that's not really the most efficient medication that we have. I think a combination of the vaccine, monoclonal antibodies. There's not enough studies for me to even say anything on ivermectin. I'm sorry for you guys, but there's studies that are being done right now on it. And when those come out, I'll give more information. But I'm not going to speak on something that has conflicting data. But monoclonal antibodies, on the other hand, do not have conflicting data. In fact, they have a very, very high percentage rate of helping people with COVID in early stages of COVID, right? Tim Pool, Joe Rogan got these, and Florida uses these, and they've seen extremely good and positive results for people who get COVID, and especially people who are in the higher risk category who get COVID. It works. It works great. And I don't understand why aren't monoclonal antibodies being pushed as much as vaccines? Why not? Why? Like, I don't get it. It's not even like ivermectin. I get the ivermectin, the whole patent thing. But
yeah, okay. Well, I asked a pharmacy guy, and he said, well, some things in the pharmaceutical industry make more money than others, so we focus on that. To me, that's actually a very simple thing. The biggest thing, I asked him about this treatment, that treatment. He said, like, look, biggest thing is, are you getting enough sunlight? Are you taking care of yourself? Are you eating properly? Are you trying to, at least get some moderate exercise? Like, doing that stuff can make a world of difference to avoid all this. So absolutely. That could be the conversation. I always prefer prevention rather than what do you do when you mess up. It's like, what do I do when I declare bankruptcy? Well, are you there yet? No. Well, okay, let's figure out something to stop. Or what do I do when I get sick? Well, are you sick now? No. Well, here's some ways to deal with that. Also, I agree with what you're saying. I'm just going to get to the last story.
You're good.
I think this is actually interesting. And I'm not a Republican or Democrat, but my understanding is a New Jersey truck driver knocked a Senate power broker out in New Jersey. Not sure what's going on with the election here, but the quiet life ended early Wednesday for Edward Durr, a truck driving Republican for Logan Township, who was unseated, one of the state's, New Jersey's most powerful elected Democrats. Durr and GOP Assembly running mates Bethine McCarthy, Patrick, and Beth Sawyer, based on unofficial results Wednesday, have flipped the solidly blue 3rd Legislative District into the Republican column. It's been 2 decades since a Republican represented the 3rd District in the Senate or Assembly, generally a Democratic state. Stephen M. Sweeney and Assemblyman John Berzencelli and Adam Taliaferro were regarded as overseeing a safe district. Both sides of were leery of conceding, proclaiming victory for the moment. However, Durr holds a solid 2,000 vote margin in his race against Sweeney. Sweeney, a West Deptford resident, has not issued a statement on Wednesday, though he canceled a Senate leadership caucus that was supposed to happen on Thursday. What's not here, and what I want to bring out, is my understanding is he spent $130, $135 his run. I'm not exactly sure the exact amount. But
he spent less than $300. That's all you need to know. Less than $300.
Less than $300. And what's good is he didn't spend $600. So when he puts that, it's not.
Oh yeah, he doesn't have to get taxed on it by the IRS. That's right.
Yeah. But what this shows to me is this. For the longest time, I do believe this was true. I was like, I even told a guy, before all this stuff was going, I want to run as a libertarian. He's like, how much can you raise? And a lot of people were, even Tulsi Gabbard talking on Joe Rogan. It's like, okay, how many people can you get in your corner? How much can you raise? It became like more like, okay, I can raise this much, but my opponent can raise this much, and he can get billboards and signs and a better team. So it's that. I do believe that was the reality for a while. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but it was more like, well, I have a bigger bank account, so I can be a representative. Now, it seems the tables have turned with everything going on. And Tim Pool actually said one time, and I'll even quote him here, that, hey, this can work. If you say, hey, I'm against, them being involved in the schools, like kind of what Youngkin said with school choice. I'm all for people making their own decisions with their own body. I'm not really fond of mandates or anything like that. And I think people can make their own decisions. Then you can pretty much add whatever the heck you want. And I mean, like he made a joke like, hey, I'm going to make a moon out of cheese. And then people before would be like, no, this guy's crazy. And he's like, well, hey, now they'd be like, well, I got to vote for him. Like, everybody get out and vote for him. Yeah, moon and cheese. Like, that's weird. But yeah, he said all the rest of the right things. So I think this can be a good thing for libertarian. Honestly, if there was a time to make, keep talking about red wave, blue wave, red wave, blue wave. Honestly, to be fair, like, you might get some good out of either or. There might be some good in red. There might be some good in blue. And it's going to be yet to see what, if there is red waves, what they do. But also,
well, there was definitely a red wave in Virginia, and I want to touch on something that you said.
We can make a yellow wave, is what I was going to say.
Yes, I would say black and yellow wave. But here's the thing, is like you said, it's about saying that you basically just want freedom, basically standing on the basic principles which this country was founded upon, right? But on top of that, when your opponents are that bad, right? That bad, that hated, that just so out of touch with reality and their voter base and the people of their country, that someone with $200 can win and beat them, shows you two things. Like you said, that when you just come out and say the most basic fundamental principles that this country was founded on, people resonate with that. But because you're facing opponents who are so sleazy, elitist, class, like there's this aura about them, this arrogance, this elitism, and this nonchalant, I'm gonna just get elected and I don't have to say anything, and I'm just gonna be in touch and with the Democratic talking points, and I'm going to check off all those boxes I got to say, and I'm going to keep saying the same things that I've said and that every Democrat has said for the last 15 years. I'm going to say that critical race theory is not in school. I'm going to say that the mandate is good. I'm simply just going to say what everyone else in my team is saying, and people have seen this, and they're like, no, I'll vote for a fucking trucker.
Can I have one thing? Or I'm not even a fan of him, but complain about a dude who's not in office. Well, this guy.
Oh, yeah, Trump. And that's a good point. And then you bring into the fact that I was so happy after this election, not necessarily because Youngkin won, but because you know what CNN did? They did what they did after was like, oh, it was just a white base really coming out and supporting. He was dog whistling to the white base. And it's really, he won the supremacist white voter base. And they were like trying to make this weird comparison of suburbans to like white supremacists and racists. And the funny thing is, when you look at Trump's numbers in the 2020 race, the one voter base that he went down on was the white population. That was the only part he went down on from 2016. And it's funny, though, because that's literally why Youngkin won, was because McAuliffe was trying to play the race card. And you got to remember, the lieutenant governor for Youngkin was a black female immigrant. So it's really stupid to do that. Winsome Sears, and you know, I've looked into her a little bit. I'm starting to really like her, maybe even more than Youngkin. I think she's actually really good. Really wants like complete constitutional carry here, like full Second Amendment rights and everything. So I'm all for that. We're pretty good in Virginia right now. But again, McAuliffe and and Northam have already put in, when McAuliffe was in office, he put in some restrictions. Northam put in a few restrictions. So it's incremental. But the point is that when you try and play the race card and it's so obviously stupid and dumb, and then after they lose, they keep making it about race. I was laughing because I'm like, okay, they're going to keep losing as long as they're doing this. As long as they keep trying to play this white supremacist, racist, Nazi, they're going to keep losing. And they're so dumb. Those people on CNN are so dumb. They really think Youngkin won because of the white base. They really think they won. It's like, no, more Democrats voted for Youngkin. Like, there was a lot of Democrats who voted for Youngkin who voted for Northam in the last one. So it's obvious what's going on here. People are standing on principles, and they're done with the race baiting. They're done with the BS, and they're done with the nonchalant attitude of McAuliffe. He's a careers politician who's donated and took in millions from the Clinton Foundation, and he was on jets with Clinton, and it's rumored. There's no certain sort of evidence on it, but it's rumored that he was on Epstein's Island. So again, this stuff is all out in the open, and when you try and play the race card, you're just going to lose. It's so dumb that I'm so happy to see when CNN does it now. You know, a while back I used to get mad, like, oh my, I used to put on CNN and be like, they're so out of touch. Now I'm laughing because I'm like, dude, this is gonna keep this is going to continue their losing streak and is going to propagate a red wave, and I'm gonna chuckle all the way there.
Yeah. Well, let me actually end with this. And also, I actually, when I was listening to, I didn't actually listen to CNN. I try not to turn. I listened to MSNBC, and they're like, "Well, he hung out with Trump. He hung out with Trump.
I know.
I'm like, dude, like that's all they have. It seems like the MSM based everything off of him, and now that it's gone, they can't get off of it. It's kind of like, you know, you listen to one of these, you know, some of my friends or people or, you know, professional athletes, you know, they knew professional athletes and people who were rock stars, and then they retire, and that's all they can talk. Like, oh, the crowd was, and back in the day, I was this, I was that.
Yeah,
like,
the glory days.
Yeah, the glory days. Back in the day, you know, I was a professional athlete. They can't get over it. They just can't like, okay, fine, it was good, but I get that feeling to them, but I think they base their whole network off of it. So it's like, well, you know, Youngkin hung out with Trump one time, but he also distanced himself, but he hung out too much.
Exactly. It's like,
this is all Trump's, like everything. Like, I'm not even a fan of Trump. I'm trying to forget about Trump and Biden. Like, if they just, you know, if we could just forget about them, that would be great. I would not.
I'm pretty sure Biden's forgot about himself a long time ago.
Yeah. I'd rather forget about it and figure out how we can do things at the state and local level, which is the whole point of which is a big, not the whole point, but a big point of this show. But here's the thing, actually, that I'm seeing now. A lot of Democrats did vote for Youngkin because, but I was on Cajun Libertarian show. I should give him a shout out, and he's like, "Yeah, I guess you go vote for Youngkin, but like, man, why isn't there a Libertarian there? Why isn't there a Libertarian?"
I know. I honestly was pretty mad. Like, yeah. I want to see more people, and not from this. I'm going to call out the Libertarian Party, but I'm going to be very specific in saying it. The Libertarians who pretend to be pro-freedom as long as it doesn't mean private businesses and private corporations. The pro-freedom when it comes to government, but when it comes to corporations, they don't mind tyranny as long as it's in the name of a private company. Those are the people that I don't want. I want more Mises types who I can vote for and know that there's nuance there. It's like, well, it's not a private company if they're literally being funded and policy is being made to benefit the organization from the government. It's not a private company that's actually under, like I said, Mussolini's definition of fascism, a lucrative merger of the state and corporation.
Yeah. So, yeah, one thing I would like libertarians and even conservatives to say when they say private business, define a private business. Don't just say private business because they have a logo or because they're not officially affiliated with the federal government. Actually figure out what it is. Look at capitalism and say, oh, wait, there's state intervention here or there's not. If there's state intervention, it's not. And even in a free society, if it was completely private, if someone does something bad, you can still ostracize them, negative reviews, protest, and, you know, raise objections.
Yeah, self-regulation, right? It's like what you're saying with OSHA. Like, I believe, and I agree with you, I think you said it more in the terms of the market, but in terms of people's ability to self-regulate themselves and others around them, we're pretty decent at doing that. When we see, like, if you're at a business and you see someone using a knife and he's using it the wrong way, most people will go up and say, oh, that's not the right way to use it, and won't let him cut himself. We're pretty decent at self-regulating ourselves and others around us. We don't necessarily need such a big body or arm of the state to help us regulate ourselves.
No, we don't. And the last thing I'll say is this. If libertarians can get that understanding, and I would love to see Mises, but even, you know, other factions of libertarians, if they can come to the thing that we just understood and then even say, hey, I have a couple $100 to run like this Jersey truck driver. We can have a yellow wave. We can start talking about real decentralization, because even you might get some Republicans or some Democrats who are still sane-minded, like Tulsi, like Rand, like Thomas Massey. That's good. But if you really, really want to get to a decentralized society, a completely free society that maybe even prevents this situation from happening again, or at least really mitigates that chance, then it's time for a black and gold wave. And I think we can do that even on a limited budget. We have the real potential here for David to beat Goliath, and the Libertarians can do that. That's my last message. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed this, talking about a lot of different things, Yemen, what's going on domestically here with Veritas, CDC and OSHA, what they've been up to, and even an insight from the New Jersey election. If you enjoyed this, you can check out LP Mises Caucus at lpmisescaucus.com. Go here and be part of the decentralized revolution. You can check out our actions here. You're keeping the Ron Paul revolution going and the ideals of Murray Rothbard alive, and helping your fellow man. Not one more war. No Yemen, no more Yemen, no more Saudi intervention, no more Syria, none of that. No more Iraq, no more Vietnam, no more lockdowns, no more bailouts, giving companies tons of money, and no more mandates, as we talked about. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Kareem. I'm your host. Also, my co-host has an amazing show called The Quantum Effect, talking about a lot of the same subjects we talk about here and more. You can find him by putting in Daniel B in the search engine, clicking Daniel B here. You can find The Quantum Effect, where he has a lot of different really good episodes, not only about topics like this, but about really extensive research and different things that you might want to know. All right, everyone. This is Kareem with the Essential Libertarians, giving you the tools for self-governance. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next video.